Welcome back to the Utilities Decoder. In this episode, we're taking a hard look at the growing crisis caused by unrecoverable electricity tariffs. Joining us again is Tommy Diedericks from Renew Consulting, who has been fighting on the front lines to challenge unfair pricing, protecting renewable investments, and pushing for a single national tariff structure. We will be unpacking the impact Eskom's new tariff plan has directly on customers and reviewing the changes to the time of use tables. We will also look at some real-world examples on the cost differences between the old and new tariffs. If you're a landlord, business owner, or property manager, this is an episode you can't afford to miss out. To those who have not had the privilege of meeting Tommy in our previous episode, he is the founder of Renew Consulting and the man who has been at the forefront of challenging municipal tariff hikes. Tommy's focus today is on how landlords are being squeezed by unrecoverable tariffs. Tommy, hi, nice to see you again. And why don't you give the viewers a brief introduction to yourself and your company?
Hi, thanks, Ryan. Like I said, I'm the owner of Renew Consulting, a company that I found specifically for the expensive tariffs and seeing what can be done to reduce energy costs for large energy consumers across the country. When I started in utilities in 2008, one of our first fights was the ridiculous increase from an average of 19 cents per kilowatt hour to 24 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's where I started, and that's where I come from. I present a lot of very large steel consumers, and as well as a few nationals like AFC and so on. But my passion and my heart is in making sure that we can reduce energy costs and each customer can focus on their core business. So thanks for that.
Great stuff. Let's get started by understanding a little bit what is Eskom's new retail tariff plan. So if we have a look, they applied for a staggering 36% increase for 2025 to 2026, and subsequently an 11.8 and 9.1 increase in the following years. What were the final approved increase percentages?
That's a great question. So the final approved increases was 12.74 for the current financial year, so from the 1st of April 2025 to end of March 2026, then 5.36 for the 1st of April 26 to end of March 27, and then 6.19% for the 1st of April 27 to the end of March 2028.
Okay, great stuff. Now, I know the 2025 to 2026 retail tariff plan has had some big changes for direct customers. Maybe if you can jump in and explain what's changing, especially for landlords. Before we dive into the retail tariff plan changes for landlords, your business is constantly evolving and your utilities management should pivot with it. Unpacked, the sponsor of today's video, has utility management specialists to help you identify opportunities, eliminate inefficiencies, and boost profitability across your portfolio. Take action and book a strategic session with one of their specialists available nationwide and discover how their tailored approach can turn utilities data into actionable insights.
So one of the things that we started with is to fight the tariff increases. The tariff increases, there was two hearings. The first one was the increase hearing, and then the second one was the retail tariff plan. Now, with the increase hearing, I was really happy when we didn't get a 36% increase because, obviously something like that would absolutely destroy the economy. Absolutely. However, just after that, they had the retail tariff plan hearings, which were not communicated properly. The problem with the retail tariff plan was that there was a few changes. One of the changes was in the structure of the tariff. So in other words, making certain elements of the tariff more expensive and certain of the tariff elements cheaper. On top of that, they also brought in new charges where they bring in costs that they incurred many years ago, whatever, into the tariffs, not just now, but going forward. The two biggest changes, the first one is they've done away with the basic economic principle of the more you buy, the less you pay. And they've leveled it out a bit where people pay more or less the same. Now, that might sound like a great idea. In principle, we should all pay the same for electricity, but it's not a realistic thing. So I think by doing away with the basic economic principle and flatlining the tariffs, there is clearly not a well thought out plan to say this is how we should charge and this is what we must do. Because the reason why basic economic principle works is because of economy of scale and the simple fact the less you use, the more it costs to get the energy to you. There's so many additional cables, breakers, meters, and additional things that needs to be purchased. And the same for a landlord. I mean, obviously, if everybody pays the same, you're going to make a loss on your electricity recoveries because you need to, even if you were to sell every drop of electricity, who's going to pay for the meter readings, the meters, the cables, the transformer maintenance, the electricity infrastructure? All of that is on you. So it is not a long-term economic viable plan. So yeah. And then the second thing that they changed is they changed the time of use. So to understand time of use, there's a different cost for electricity depending on when you use electricity. There's a great reward to this because if you have the ability to shift load, it can be very, very beneficial. But unfortunately, not everybody has that ability to shift load. And again, to come back to the landlords, this can be very detrimental because some of the tariffs sometimes are not time of use. So in other words, you have a tenant that it pays a fixed rate, a business tariff, for example, in Eskom's case, which is a non-time of use tariff for their electricity consumption. But you are supplying him and he's in a shopping center, and therefore that electricity cost that you're paying is on a peak electricity cost and he's just paying a normal rate. So there's a loss. So if you bring up that table on the time of use again, just for practical things, it's the old versus the new. You've got high season and low season. So that's basically winter and summer. The high season is just June, July, August consumption. Low season is the rest of the year. And what they've done is, in essence, they took 3 hours peak in the morning and they just made it 2 hours peak in the morning. And they moved the 3 hours to in the afternoons or evenings. And then they introduced standard on Sunday, which the entire Sunday used to be off-peak. This was a deliberate thing by Eskom that they had to look at when they can make the most money. The cost of some peak electricities, for example, in Ekurhuleni is over 11 Rand per kilowatt hour on peak. That can, for some municipalities, can be a very big revenue stream, especially if you consider for that same electricity, they might be paying Eskom 4 Rand or 5 Rand per kilowatt hour. So this has a real impact and a direct impact on your shopping center or your business. So yeah.
Fantastic. So ultimately, they've just taken a look at the consumption, norms and found the best place to put the most expensive tariff in play. Thanks for tuning in to the Utilities Decoder. Next week, we touch on the complexity of these municipal tariff increases, as well as the broader social and economic impacts. Until then, stay informed, stay efficient, and stay empowered.